Hi, it's Lauren. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to show you some of the tools that comes with your LK150 knitting machine, how to use them, and then I'm going to teach you how to cast on. I'll show you two methods of casting on, the first one being the waste yarn method, and the second one being the E-wrap cast on. Here I have the LK150 instruction manual, and they tell you all of the accessories that comes with your machine. I like to keep all of my tools that I use while knitting in this little plastic bin. I got it on Amazon. It has little grippy things on the bottom, and it's just really nice to have right there just to easily grab and put back, because I know when I'm working sometimes I will just set something down like unconsciously and then I lose it. So I like to keep everything here. Your LK150 will come with 3 cast-on combs, 3 transfer tools, a latch hook tool, spare needles, gauge ruler, 2 push combs, 2 claw weights, and 2 cast-on comb connectors. It will also come with 2 yarn rests, some ravel cord, a tapestry needle, and oil. I don't have those set out right now, but these are the main things that you'll be using to knit. For this demonstration, we are going to cast on 15 needles on either side of the bed. First, grab your needle pusher, push out 15 needles on either side. Then, make sure that your carriage is set on the triangle and the number 2 on both sides. Slide the carriage across the needles to get them into working position. Now push back every other needle. To cast on, just hold the bottom of your yarn as you slide the carriage across the needles. Every other needle that we pushed out now has a loop of yarn on it. Now push the needles that we pushed back earlier back into working position. Grab your cast-on comb. Since this is a small number of needles, we don't need the other 2 cast-on combs. If you were casting on the full bed, you would use all 3. You want the weight of your cast-on comb to be distributed evenly, so I have placed the center of the cast-on comb in the center of the bed. Something important to avoid getting loops on the edges of your work is not only using claw weights, but making sure that when you cast on, it's a little tricky, but only 1 needle on the outer edge after your last stitch should have the tooth on it. I went round and round trying to figure out why I get loops, and it needs to be like this. Now just slide the carriage back across the needles. If it's a little difficult to slide, you can adjust your tension dial. After a few rows, grab your claw weights and hang them on the outer edges. The reason for the claw weights is the needles on the outer edges are the ones that will most likely drop stitches when you're working because there's not much weight pulling on them. So you always want to have at least 2 teeth hanging off the edge, and then we can keep knitting. If you're having trouble and your yarn is making weird loops or not making stitches properly, it might be because your tension is too loose. Before you knit each row, you want to make sure that your tension spring comes down, and then it looks about like that. So I have this dial up here set to 13, which means it's got a really loose hold on the yarn. I'm gonna pull that down to like 5. I have my stitch dial on 8 because this is a little bit of a thicker yarn. And sometimes if your tension spring is not coming down, I will just pull back here to create a little bit more tension. If it's too loose, it's gonna make loops on the end and not knit correctly. See how it comes down? And then it'll kind of pull back up. If you are ready to change colors, so this is your waste yarn, all you'll do, cut the yarn, de-thread it, grab your color for your project, since this yarn is really thin, I'm going to put the dial down to 1 up here, and I'm going to move the stitch dial down to 4. So we're going to make a smaller size stitch on this example. That is a little too tight up here, so I'm going to move it to 5. Always move your claw weights up about every 10 or 15, 20 rows. If you want to take it off, there's 2 methods that I use. One is the waste yarn method. So essentially, you would put your waste yarn back on the machine, knit a couple of rows, just slide the carriage across your work. So the waste yarn on either ends is essentially holding your live stitches. The second cast-on method I like to use is the E-wrap cast-on. Take your desired number of needles, push them all the way out to position D. Take your yarn. I start by creating a slip knot and placing it on the last needle. This is called the E-wrap cast-on because you're basically writing a cursive E with your yarn. By the way, your yarn is not in the carriage right now. It's just loose. So just begin by drawing letter E's. I use my left hand to kind of push the yarn back and just go on the right side of each needle, coming across the top. As you do this, you might need to pull some yarn down so you have enough to cast on all your needles. Unlike the waste yarn method, this method creates a closed edge. So none of your stitches will be live stitches and they will not come apart. Because if I were to pull that waste yarn off, it would unravel my work. This method took me a little bit to get used to, some trial and error. So don't get discouraged if it doesn't work out the first time, because it did not work the first few times for me. And some of those I did are a little loose, so we're just going to see how it works. This is what your needles should look like with the E-wrap cast on. After you've E-wrapped all of your needles, thread your carriage. As you can see, there's way too much loose yarn back here. So we're just going to pull from the back to create a little bit more tension. And make sure that your carriage is still on the triangle and lever 2 on your carriage, or it won't knit needles in D position. And just slide across. And that's your E-wrap cast on. Since we don't have any weight on this yet, it's helpful sometimes to push forward the needles back into D position for the first few rows so that we don't drop any stitches. Just do it a couple times until you feel like you have enough room to add some weight. Apply your claw weights. Just gonna try to get these on the very edges. Let's knit a few more rows. Now I'm going to show you how to use your latch hook tool to do the crochet bind off. First, release your yarn from the carriage. Push all of your needles from position B to position D. Be sure that your yarn is on the right side of the last needle. If you're taking off your work from the left side and your carriage ended on the left, your working yarn will be coming down on the left side of the last needle. Take your latch hook tool, insert it on the left side of the needle. Be sure that the loop goes past the latch. Grab your yarn and scoop it, pull through. And this is how you do a crochet bind off. Sometimes I use my left hand to pull down on the work to get through. So you'll always have this loop at the bottom and it's just the working yarn. You're essentially crocheting off of the machine. When you're done, cut your yarn and pull the tail through. Remove your weights. And you can just slide the needles back. So this is the swatch that we made with our E-wrap cast on. You can see both edges. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope somebody found this helpful. In my next video, I will teach you how to use the transfer tools for making increases and decreases.